let's go Las Vegas Raiders. Another team, a lot of turnover this offseason, a lot of excitement. Their over-under's 8.5. And again, the Chargers are probably going to be higher than that. I haven't looked at it specifically, but 8.5 for probably the team that most would expect is going to be last in the division. Is that fair to the Raiders? I mean, that's what the totals are going to say, right?
Don't know.
Chargers are over under 10. So it's not PFF saying this, Raiders fans. Everybody's expecting the Raiders to be the worst team in this division.
And Denver were at 10.
Denver's at 10. So the top three teams are over 10. 10.5 is their over-under. The Raiders are at 8.5.
Yeah.
So people are expecting the Raiders to be the worst team. Last year, they did make the playoffs. They did beat out the Chargers for the playoffs. It did feel like on one hand, it felt like they overachieved, just using simple measures, points for, points against, this and that. It felt like the Raiders overachieved to make the playoffs. On the other hand, they dealt with their head coach getting fired, the Henry Ruggs incident. They dealt with so much off the field. Really impressive job by the Raiders to get it together and get the defense playing better than expected, except against the Chiefs, getting a lot of pieces in place and Max Crosby breaking out. There was a lot to be excited about for the Raiders last year. There's a lot to be excited about this year. Josh McDaniels comes in. Devontae Adams comes in to be buddies with Derek Carr. So there's a lot of potential for this Raiders team, and the thing that could thwart it is the actual division and the teams that they have to play.
The division and the offensive line.
And the line.
I love what they did this offseason. They were in a really tough spot because Denver go and bring in a great quarterback. The Chargers already have a great quarterback, and they load up anyway. The Chiefs were already so far ahead of everybody else, they could afford to trade away a guy and just rely on the draft and having the advantage they already had. So the Raiders are looking at this and saying, well, all right, what do we do? You can't start over from Derek Carr. He's too good. We know he's capable of really high-level play, and the chances of us getting rid of him and finding somebody in the gap between Derek Carr and the other three guys in the division is pretty small. So let's just embrace Derek Carr and try and help him out. Like go and trade for Devontae Adams, go and bring in Chandler Jones as a pass rushing upgrade. It's about all they could do. And, Adams has the potential to have the kind of impact on this offense that Jamar Chase had last year for the Bengals, which is you bring in an elite number one receiver that can win in all ways. And that obviously helps the offense by whatever that addition is. But it also makes life easier for Hunter Renfrow. It makes life easier for Darren Waller. It makes life easier for the running backs, Josh Jacobs, whoever they end up using primarily there. It makes everybody's life easier, including, by the way, the offensive line to a degree, and obviously Derek Carr. So that can have an absolutely transformative effect. The only question is it enough that the offensive line can just keep its head above water? Because you've got Colton Miller, who's become a very good left tackle, and then really 4 question marks. And
4 guys. For the 5 guys that are in the mix to start, or 6 guys, there's 1 rookie in Dylan Parham. We'll see if he gets a shot. The other guys in line to start, all below average. PFF grades, WAR, everything last year.
Yeah, and Alex Leatherwood was catastrophic as a rookie. Gave up the most pressure of any offensive lineman in the NFL. They don't need that offensive line to be good. They just need it to not be that bad. And, Devontae Adams and the offense being better will help, but it might not be enough to offset how bad it can be. And again, this is not like, is the offense so bad that the Raiders will stink? No. But is the offense so bad that they might not be able to keep pace with the other 3 teams in this brutal division? Yeah.
If I knew that they had an average offensive line, if they could get these guys to play at an average level, and you never know with the scheme change, and some of them are young, and but as you mentioned, question marks, right? Like when we evaluate offensive lines, it's like how many are dependable, how many guys are dependable, how many have we just not seen it yet? And most of the good offensive lines have 3 or 4 dependable players, and the Raiders right now literally have 1, and that's Colton Miller, who has turned his career around. So you need other guys to turn their career around like Colton Miller. But I also don't think, I keep talking myself into the Raiders throughout the offseason. It's not that far-fetched. I think there are a lot of similarities between Derek Carr and Matthew Stafford. I think guys who are in the probably high third-tier quarterbacks for the majority of their career. That's QB 10 to 14 at any given time in the NFL. I think that's a fair assessment of Derek Carr against the landscape of NFL quarterbacks. I think that's a fair assessment of Matthew Stafford against his era of quarterbacks, QB 10, QB 11. And when you get that guy, if you do have a Devontae Adams, or much like Stafford, you do put him in this Rams team where him and Cooper Kupp just take it to a whole new level, and you have a good offensive system, presumably with Josh McDaniels coming in, that's going to help. That's a guy I think you can win with, right? Like you could take Derek Carr, let's call him QB 10, and get QB 5 type of production out of him. Especially if Devontae Adams is as special as he's played these last couple of years, even without Aaron Rodgers. We're looking at teams have to try to cover Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. Waller is one of the 5 tight ends that I think, is an absolute mismatch weapon around the NFL. Hunter Renfrow, fantastic complementary piece. My old friend Mac Hollins is seeing first-team reps for the Raiders. That might not be good for the Raiders in the depth chart, but I liked Mac Hollins like 7 years ago, so that's fun. Anyway, I just think we could see Derek Carr, if the offensive line can just hold up, we could see Derek Carr put up huge numbers, have a career year. We could be talking about him in the MVP race, but it is, as I've said, one of the stories of the season. How does Devontae Adams, how does a wide receiver 1 elevate an offense? I don't know if we'll truly see it this year just because of the offensive line. But it could be like, give the Raiders one more year, focus on the line, and next year they're going to be crazy dangerous.
Yeah,
but they'll be tough to beat this year, though.
Thing is, that line was bad last year, and they ranked 17th in offense in terms of EPA per play. So if Devontae Adams takes 17th, if he makes a 10-spot difference to that, all of a sudden they're 7th and they're in a really good spot. And that's just Devontae Adams. Even if the offensive line is no better than it was a year ago, if the offensive line is slightly better, I think that's eminently achievable. So I think ultimately the offensive line kind of places a cap on how good this team can be, but I think it can be really good. I think that offense in particular can be pretty special. Then the defense still has a ton of holes, but they have very good players at a couple of important positions. The Max Crosby, Chandler Jones combination, could be one of the best pass rushing duos in the league, even if Jones is declining a bit. The decline is coming largely, I think, in just not defending the run anymore and selling out for the pass. Crosby was incredible last year, led the NFL in pressures against generally a really bad slate of offensive tackles. He'll have a tougher job this year, but he looks legit. Nate Hobbs has been getting a ton of hype in training camp, a guy who graded really well as a rookie. They've been saying he's going one-on-one with Devontae Adams and holding his own, which is about as high a compliment as you're going to get. If Nate Hobbs turns out to be legit after, year one, that's a huge boost to the secondary. The Raiders defense, I think, will be the weakest area, but could be okay.
Where do you land with the Raiders? Over, under 8.5.
Yeah, to me, the Raiders, I think Vegas has it right in terms of one team in this division is not going to win as many games as they should based off the talent level because of the other 3 teams in the division. And if you're picking one, I think you would immediately default to the guy that's probably the worst quarterback of the 4 in most given years. There might be a year where Derek Carr is the second best quarterback in the division. But if you were betting heading into the year, every single year, you would say he's the 4th best.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of player evaluation and all that stuff, right? Like Derek Carr has been a better quarterback than Russell Wilson for the last year and a half.
Right.
For the majority of their respective careers, Russell Wilson, of course, has been the better quarterback. So what does that mean for 2022 going forward?
So I think ultimately Vegas is right in terms of if you're playing the percentages, you pick the Raiders to have the worst record of the 4 and be the team that looks relatively disappointing based off, last year or expectations or whatever. 8.5, you said?
8.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the under and say they win 8, I guess.
I'm going to go over for the Raiders. I think I'm more buying into the Raiders. I've been suckered into buying into the Raiders and kind of being down on the Broncos.